Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called America is Not Europe. Well, yeah, I think there's very different, well, to begin with, it depends. One's a continent, as in the whole American continent, and the other is the European continent. Of course, they're going to have so many differences, so I don't think anyone will be confused about where you're standing, but I am very interested to know what this video is about. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
I was born and grew up in Denmark, and these are countries where the government spends taxes and spends approximately twice the level of the United States.
A lot of money.
And while I am very sympathetic to many of your spending proposals, especially on the things you mentioned on early childhood and single payer and the like, I also know that these are countries that heavily tax everybody, not just the rich people. Middle classes, they have consumption taxes on everything of 20%. So while I'm very sympathetic to what you say, my sense is still that you would like to spend as a Scandinavian, but not tax as one. Is that correct?
We have the answers, and you raised some very good points.
Comparing the US with Europe and countries in Europe would be naive, oversimplistic, and offend a bunch of people.
Of course.
Land masses are complex. But I'm going to go ahead and compare them anyways, because some of the comparisons between Europe and the US remain way too superficial.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Oh, Bush father.
It's not uncommon to obsess over the usual suspects for why the US is less equal than Europe and also has less good quality, affordable social programs.
They're just very
the
different
analysis
societies.
is simple. The US has more billionaires and taxes them less.
That as well.
Europe has less billionaires, but taxes them more. With a larger tax base to fund popular social programs and also less inequality, just raise the taxes on the rich, like the Europeans do.
Yeah, you would think that's the...
Although the tax rates for rich people explain some part of the difference, it doesn't explain enough. Europeans can afford good social programs because a lot of Europeans pay a lot for them, mainly through indirect taxes.
What do you mean indirect?
Europeans are also more equal before taxes even factored in, because a lot of the social programs they pay more for also reduce pre-tax inequality. And the US has, so far, been unable to adopt the same. Why? Well, in part because taxing the wealthiest of society is easier to advertise and justify than taxing everybody a lot more. In Europe, most people don't really need to be convinced about paying for their welfare states because it works sufficiently for most of them. But in the US, there's an intimate struggle with deciding whether pre-distribution will be a state, local, or federal solution. Part of the reason is that in the US, the federal government...
I think it's just very different systems, so I don't think they're comparable. It's comparing apples to oranges. ...gets
the most media attention, while state and local governments can avoid scrutiny. This means that minimum wage hikes in the US are practically always seen as a responsibility for the federal government, which has to delicately balance different costs of living, like laborers living in New York City and miners living in West Virginia.
Which doesn't really make sense.
In Europe, though, a country like France or Denmark can opt for different geographically sensitive policy while also being held more directly into account because the assignment of responsibility is clearer to its citizens.
There's this definition of a wicked problem, which is circulating around in the literature, which suggests that a wicked problem is wicked if it has so many dimensions to it that you can't go at one angle to the problem and try to fix it. And I think school finance is like that. So school districts get money from their local communities in the form of property taxes. They'll also get money from the state, and the state might give them money through multiple formulas. And then a portion, a much smaller portion, about 9 or 10%, comes from the federal government. So even if you tried to solve the problem at, say, the state level, there are these other funding sources that come with their own restrictions, which ultimately affect how the money gets used in schools.
In Connecticut, a U.S. state, a school in Bridgeport will be poorer by virtue of being surrounded by poor proproperties, while a school in Greenwich will be richer because it is surrounded by richer properties.
Yeah, but that's why
this is because local taxes are largely funded by property values in the area. However, this concept fails to explain everything. Educational disparities also exist across Europe and within its countries. The US is not unique for having a system that predisposes poor children to poorer resources.
Oh, really? I thought Europe was different.
Education systems are complex. Finland is not the same as Sweden. And resources invested in education and the quality that follows does not seem like a linear relationship.
Yeah, I think
the US's unique situation is that its quality does not match the amount that the US actually spends on it.
Well, that's the important part.
One of the problems with answering why resources don't match the quality you would expect in the US is because the decentralized nature of school districts makes it pretty difficult to actually identify what spending works and what doesn't. Overall, there are some indications that, compared with Europe, the amount of staffing, the associated health and retirement benefits, alongside transportation, all add up to more costs for the American education system.
Everything's more
The
expensive.
differences don't end there.
In the 1990s,
Not only
as
that-
the crime rate was plummeting, as American life was getting safer and safer, Americans freaked out and thought that if they take their eyes off their children, the children will be
Oh, yeah.
abducted.
That was
Now,
the
this
thing.
goes back, the fear was stoked by cable TV in the 1980s. There were a few high-profile abductions.
This never
But it's not
happened.
until the 1990s that we really start locking kids up and saying, you cannot be outside until you're 14 or 15.
That's crazy.
We took this essential period of childhood from about 8 to 12, when kids throughout history have practiced independence, have gotten into adventures, have made rafts and floated down the Mississippi River.
Okay,
We took that period.
one of
and
those-
said,
those things
you
is
don't
not
get to
like the
practice
other."
independence until it's too late, until that period is over.
Kids in the US are raised differently than kids in Europe.
Absolutely, yes.
Some blame the planning that produced more isolated American families, some the over-paranoia towards kidnapping in the 1980s, and others point to an increasingly competitive environment where parents try to give their children an edge over the others by helicoptering them. It's really not that
that's
far a
really important,
stretch
yeah.
to say that many European children could be considered to have more freedom at an earlier age.
That's insane.
American children are less likely to be able to walk to school alone compared with European children, which you can of course connect to overall crime rates, and authoritative school policy is still much more accepted across the US than it is in Europe.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, it just depends on a lot of factors.
The real key to the distinctiveness of America is the structure of our government. One part of it, of course, is the independence of the judiciary. But there's a lot more. There are very few countries in the world, for example, that have a bicameral legislature. Oh, England has a House of Lords for the time being, but the House of Lords has no substantial power. They can
They
just
don't
make
have
the
power?
Commons pass a bill a second time. France has a Senate, it's honorific. Italy has a Senate, it's honorific. Very few countries have two
Really?
separate bodies in the legislature equally powerful.
Yeah, in theory, that
That's a
should
lot
be a
of
good
trouble,
thing.
as you gentlemen doubtless know, to get the same language through two different bodies
Oh,
elected
well,
in a
okay,
different
I can see the
fashion.
problem.
Very few countries in the world have a separately elected chief executive. Sometimes I go to Europe to talk about separation of powers. And when I get there, I find that all I'm talking about is independence of the judiciary. Because the Europeans don't even try to divide the two political powers, the two political branches, the legislature and the chief executive.
Shouldn't it be?
In all of the
I don't know.
parliamentary countries, the chief executive is the creature of the legislature. There's never any disagreement between them and the prime minister, as there is sometimes between you and the president. When there's a disagreement, they just kick him out. They have a no confidence vote,
Yeah, but
a
I
new
think that's
election,
bad, right?
and they get a prime minister who agrees with the legislature.
Well, that's bad.
And, the Europeans.
The difference is simple. European countries are mainly nations, not federations. A European
yeah,
state,
important
if it
key.
existed, could never be the same as the US.
Never, of
Written in their
course.
constitution, US states are modeled after the federal government, and state governments, which mirror the one above, usually have their own chamber of representatives, a senate, and also have an executive mirrored after their president.
Yeah.
In Europe, if there was any state that was above the countries that made it up, it would have to be modeled from those very different countries beneath
Yeah.
it, rather than serving as a model for the countries below it. This is an important
Kind of
difference
insane.
because it means that any kind of European government would have to balance parliamentary systems with presidential republics, federal states with unitary ones, and they'll be
Doesn't make
expected to create a
sense.
system that hopefully pleases each one sufficiently.
No, it wouldn't work.
All in all, although the differences between the two are practically endless and somewhere near impossible to actually describe, it's still a worthwhile effort to try and figure a few
There's so many things. Culture, oh my god, mixed use Sony, university tuition,
and also
toilets.
discuss them. In some way, Europe has
Jeremy
more
Mango.
breathing room to
Peanut butter
understand
and
what it
jelly.
wants to be, which is no easy task, because whatever you think Europe
How
is,
are you?
it can still look
Is that
across the
controversial?
Atlantic and realize what it definitely is not.
Oh, lobbying. I don't think that you're in Europe, there's lobbying, or maybe there. Oh, paying for water, portion sizes, police, talking to strangers, pledge of allegiance. Oh, yeah. Homelessness, political correctness, sugary bread, skyscrapers, Robert Moses, what is that? IRS, small talk, affordable cheese. Okay. I would love to know which ones in that. Obviously, that last part was a little bit funny. But I would love to know which one has affordable cheese. Are they referring to the US or Europe? Because I think in the US, cheese it's cheap, right? Well, cheese is not technically, I don't think you can legally call it cheese, but I think obviously cheese is expensive, as in good quality cheese is expensive, but you're getting, it's worth it, of course, but it's a good quality, it's a good relation between money, between cost and quality. But I know it's gonna cost you more, but it's gonna be good quality cheese. So I don't know, maybe they're referring to Europe with affordable. You know, the good news is U.S. has affordable cheese. Bad news, well, it's not really cheese. We can't legally call it that. I think it would be very funny. And of course, the other things are just there's just a lot of things. The flag obsession and the Pledge of Allegiance. I think those are things that I think the average, I think, European. It's very, what on earth are those things? Oh, yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance. You have to do this, and you have to do this every day at school. I think it's really weird, and of course, all the you know, the flag. I think that's solely. I think it's only an American thing, or maybe it isn't. I don't know, because maybe I think I have I don't know. Maybe. Actually, I'm not sure. I know that in the U.S., obviously, there's a lot of the flag and the country's flag is so important. Not that in other countries that's not important, but it's just a lot of things. So you have to, the flag, and it's this thing, and there's this, it's a symbol, and when people are protesting, they burn the American flag, and it's just obviously it's a very controversial thing, and people just put their flags on because they're proud to be an American citizen. So of course they're gonna put their flags in in their backyards, and not even just on the 4th of July. They have this, their own flag, the American flag. They have this all year round. And I don't think in Europe, I think maybe it's less, I don't know, because I've seen countries where it does happen. People, for some reason, they also have their country's flags. But I don't know, it's just, I think you just see them less. I think maybe in the UK, I don't think in the UK they do that. Because, and I'm talking UK as in both Scotland, Wales, and England, and all those countries, I think, but maybe I'm off. Again, I don't know enough about this, but I have the impression that the flag is less of a big deal. Obviously, if you're burning the country's flag, that's going to be really important, and it's going to be controversial. But I don't think that's done. People just do not. It's a thing about, yeah, sure, they put it up when there's a special sort of day that they celebrate. They don't have an independence. Usually, some countries in Europe, I know they have an independence, and I think, well, yeah, that would be. I think, oh yeah, you're right. You should put the flag on that day. But I don't know if all year round people are just putting their flags as a sign of patriotism. I don't think that's done. But I would love. I actually do not know why. I don't know. I think Americans are a little bit obsessed with the whole flag thing. I'd be the first to say I do believe it is. It's kind of weird because again, they teach you this at school, so. It's a thing, it's sort of indoctrinating children for them to, you grew up as an adult and, it's still the same sort of, the flag. I think that's part of the thing. Usually, obviously not everyone's like this, but I think that's the idea, which I don't know why, because it's just a flag, right? It's a piece of fabric, but I get it. It's the symbol, is what it represents. But again, that would be what kind of funny. It is a pretty big difference. The sugar bread, I have no idea what is sugar bread. I know in countries in Europe, is this bread with chocolate? I have no idea. The bathroom stalls, the toilets, there's so many things. But whatever. The actual sort of the root, I think, of the whole video. I do think, like he said, it's strange, and I think it's really hard to compare. One continent, because they weren't talking about the American continent, they were talking about US, the United States, as in the country. Compare it with all Europe, which I think is already, and he said, of course, people are going to be offended because you can't actually compare a whole continent with, 42, 46 states, 46 countries, not states, or with the United States, which obviously has no states, but it's just one country. However, I think I get what they were going with the video, as in just usually you can see sort of the macro situation when it comes to, for instance, taxes. I think taxes they're a really important thing. I don't know why it's controversial. The whole, you have to tax people and you have to tax, billionaires and millionaires and people that just earn more. People don't have to be millionaires to sort of, they don't have to be in that upper tax bracket in order for them to be taxed more. I don't know why it's controversial, because I think I do believe in this case. I think Europe has the probably advantage. I know I just like the European model a little bit better, because again, it's if you earn more, everything should be, obviously it's not going to be, you have to pay 1 million in taxes. I don't even earn that much. Yeah, of course, everything's going to be proportionate to your earnings, and of course, the more you earn, the more taxes you have to give away. That's just obvious. That's just, classic, logical. That's a logical thing. But I know that it's quite controversial in the US, the whole you have to tax billionaires, because obviously what you're talking about, it's not just people that earn a lot of money. No, I'm not talking about people that earn a lot of money. I'm talking about the actual millionaires and billionaires, and just that there's not a lot of them, apparently. That it's crazy to think, no, the US has a lot of billionaires, which that's crazy to me. I don't know how many billionaires are living in the US, that they should of course be taxed more. I think it's just crazy that's a thing about, it's a point of contention, and people are constantly discussing this, and they're sort of, no, you can't do this. Is what do you mean? Maybe that has to do with lobbying, and I don't think Europe has that as well, which is one of the key differences. I don't think, maybe they do, but I don't know. I wouldn't assume anything, but I think they do not have the lobbying thing. So the lobbying system, I'm pretty sure billionaires are sort of, they're lobbying because they don't want to be taxed. I don't know. It's just weird to me. And and because I'm thinking about the medium sort of average citizen, it's not going to be, I don't think that people are going to be, no, do not tax billionaires. Is why you're protecting someone that's, that leads a life that's probably 100 times better than yours, speaking economically, not happiness or whatever. But it's just kind of crazy. I don't know why would you be against this. No, yeah, of course, if they earn more, of course they should be taxed more. And more importantly, I think obviously when it comes to taxes, I think, actually taxes are quite there, it's a lot of money in taxes in the US as well, because it's not as if the US doesn't pay taxes and people do not pay taxes when they get their salaries, when they have some money. The IRS is this whole system, and you're scared of going to jail if you don't declare your taxes properly. And it's just the whole thing that I don't think a lot of people understand how it works. I think just the medium average citizen does not really understand how the IRS works. You just kind of pray this is right. I don't know if I'm stealing the state. I don't know if I'm stealing I'm auto-stealing myself. I have no idea. Praying that's right. That's why a lot of people, not to say most of everyone, has to pay someone for them to do the taxes, because I have no idea what this is. I don't know what it means because I'm not an accountant, so I can't tell you this. And I think that's wild. That in Europe, I think all nations in Europe do this. No, it's already, you don't have to calculate how much you owe us, the state and the country. They already calculate this as whatever. We already took out what we needed. We already did the math. This is yours. Do whatever. This is your money. Do whatever you want to with this. I think that should be right. Everything that I think makes it a little bit easier for you to live as your daily life, your normal life, without worrying over things like this. That's a win, especially because, again, less math in general. Leave math to the professionals. That's what I assume, especially when it comes to very important things. That's calculating taxes and calculating how much you earn and how much is your return. And I don't know, all of those things. And you have to fill out so many forms. And it's an insane thing. So yeah, of course, of course, Europe does it better, because I'm pretty sure, the state already does this for you. Whatever. We already took them out, and they sort of tell you, yeah, well, you earned this, and we removed, in taxes, you have to pay this and this and that, and your net worth is this. That's it. That's how much you have. Great, thank you, love it. I don't have to be worried about going to jail because I don't understand how to do taxes and I don't understand how math works. So I love that part. But obviously going a little bit deeper as where your taxes are going, I think that's really important. That's what a lot of people, I think, in the US obviously are very concerned that, where are my taxes going? That's why people have, you have representatives and you call them, and it's about transparency. Of course, you should be aware of where your taxes are going. But I think it's never enough money. I have to begin by saying this. No one's happy. Everyone's always going to be, no one's going to be 100% happy. You're always going to find something to complain about, and it's never enough money. And that's where it goes. But I think that's the thing. People are complaining. If I have to give away so much of my taxes, then I should, that should be reflected in my city, in my state, in my country. But I think that's really the main difference. I think Europeans are probably a little bit happier in general. They don't care. They do have their tax, they're heavily taxed, but I don't think they care about giving that much money, because everything works, and you're seeing the changes reflected in your daily life. So of course you don't care, because yeah, sure, maybe they take out a lot of money out of my paycheck, That there's a lot of things that, I'm leaving free of worry about. I don't know, whatever it is that you're concerned about. It just allows you to have a better quality of life. So I think ultimately, when it comes to taxes, I think that's my point of view is as long as you're seeing, the taxes reflected back, it's not really a concern of how much, you're actually, well, obviously you should be aware, but it's the thing about, of course, if everything's working, then I don't care. Yeah, sure, the taxes are fine. Even though I know that it can seem a little bit shocking because I've seen how much they're being taxed. Sometimes it's up to 30 or 40%. That's a lot of money. I can see it being quite shocking as in, no, you're not earning that. You're earning a 30% less or 40% less. But again, there's a lot of things that I don't have to worry about. So, ultimately, I don't know, it's a win-win situation. It's a little shocking to, I think, probably getting used to this because I think Europeans are probably used to, because again, they live this that's their system. So of course it only makes sense if you're an outsider, you're going to be, I'm earning what? No. Of course it's going to be different for them. It's fine. But and you can see, I think that's probably the better model. Just because, again, maybe it's just, I don't know. Because Europe, again, I'm painting this huge, with a huge, brush stroke. And I know each country is going to be different. Every country, I would assume, handles taxes a little bit different. Some people are probably a little bit happier with what is being taken away. Some people are probably in some other places and some other countries are going to be unhappy and they're going to be, we're heavily taxed, but we're not seeing, the taxes are not being, we're not seeing this, we're not seeing results. But I think usually that's not really how it goes in Europe, but in the United States, it's a constant thing. So I think that should be, no, of course, you should definitely change the system. And maybe look to other countries, and again, maybe look at Europe and how they do it. I didn't know that it was because I think it's a whole part about federal funding and also taxes, and there's a whole thing of the little pie thing when you have the different sections. And even though you try to fix one problem, as in let's say, we're fixing, I don't know, the federal tax, the income tax, whatever. You're fixing one thing, but you're not fixing the whole problem, which I think is really also really key when it comes to fixing things and problems, not just in the United States, I think all countries in Europe as well. It's the whole, if a country has so many, I don't know, because there are always going to be issues, there are always going to be trouble, something happening, people are always going to be, there's always going to be something happening, and there's always going to be room for improvement. But that's the thing, when you have a problem or you have something that you want to improve, and there's several, I think, factors that really do, they influence this problem. Of course we have to actually tackle the problem from all sides, because if we only tackle one, then, we're not fixing the actual problem. So I think that's really important. Really good thing to keep in mind as well, both politically, economically, and just in life. Yeah. If you have a problem and it has several factors that affect this problem, you need to tackle everything. Because it's not going to work. It's not going to be effective if you only tackle one. But yeah, I think that's probably the main difference. And don't even get me started the education thing. I didn't know though that apparently in Europe, because I think in the United States, where you go, the school you go to, it depends on your school district, and obviously it depends on where your property or where you live, your actual property, but where you live is located, and then where you live, basically. And that's why people are constantly moving to better areas, better neighborhoods, just because, this school is a little bit better, the school district is different, and I'm going to give my kid more advantages, and that's why people move, and they make the sacrifice of, yes, we're moving to something that's probably a little bit more expensive, that the school district is better, which I think is absolutely wild to me. I think that's crazy, because no, you should be, I don't know, it's just crazy that how different I think schools are, because I think the system is not something, there's not anything inherently wrong with the system, but I really do believe when it starts to get dicey is when you have all this, there's a lot of discrepancies in the school, in the quality of the school and the quality of education once you start getting into the different school systems. So I think obviously that would be the root of the problem. And it's crazy, but I didn't know that in Europe they also have sort of deficiencies in that case. Obviously, each country, I know all countries are going to have, because I just said, obviously no country is perfect. But I didn't know that, it's a sign, I think, just poor areas, or just, regions in general. They kind of it's kind of designed by that. So I think it's really, when people are saying, it's really easy to just say, I don't know, stop being poor. But it's really, it's a system because systems are in place that are designed to sort of keep people poor, which I think you should definitely, that's what we should change, of course. But I think it's hard when the system is designed and you have the system against you, which I think it makes it much more, I don't know, well, it's on you, of course, but I think it makes it more, I think, remarkable when someone actually breaks out of the system, because you have all odds are stacked against you, which, it shouldn't be, but that's sadly how it goes. That's really how it is. But yeah, that's crazy. And of course, the cuddling thing, the helicopter parents. I don't know why Europe. Apparently, they didn't went through the whole sort of thing of the panic of my kid's gonna be kidnapped. They're gonna be taken away. I have no idea, because I know that was sort of a panic thing, but I have no idea if that actually happened. Did it happen? As in, there were a lot of kidnappings. There was a lot of kidnapping children, and I don't know. There was an ad or something that kidnapped kids, or it was just sort of, it was a moral panic, but it didn't really happen. As in, if you look at the statistics, it was all in the media, but it didn't really. We don't have recorded cases of this actually happening. Of course, they're going to happen sometimes, but they're isolated. They're not a thing. As in, oh yeah, I was panicking. But I hadn't thought of this, but yeah, Europe did not went through the whole thing? Apparently they didn't. I think it's wild to think of a 13 or 14-year-old cannot walk around, alone. No, of course they can't. It's a teen. I think teens, obviously, they said when you start to be more independent. I think a balance is good. I think your kids in Europe just are more independent, I think, earlier on in their lives, which are probably going to be, I don't know, it just depends on the kind of parent, and I don't know, it just depends on a lot of factors. I think a mix would be good. I think kids are still should be kids, right? You still have to. There are certain things where maybe you shouldn't worry because you're still a kid. There's going to be so much time for you to worry about things later on, which I find. A little coddling, it's okay. But then, as you approach, preteen and teenagehood, well, yeah, of course, that's where you start being a little bit more independent, because an independent teenager is going to grow up to be an independent and a well-adjusted adult. So I think it should be sort of a balance between both sort of methods and both. I don't know, there's got to be a balance. Like, again, no extremes. It's not good when you're super, no, they can't go out on their own and they're 16, they're 17. Of course, that's wild. But also, I think you shouldn't sort of leave them too early, because again, it's. I think it's good for kids to be, again, they have a parent or an adult to sort of to rely on. That's also good. So I think maybe balance is always a good thing. But yeah, I hadn't thought of, okay, so Europe didn't have that panic of, oh yeah, but also I think you need to also take into account the actual statistics, because I think maybe cities in Europe and more countries in Europe probably a little bit safer, and I think people are allowed to do that. You're not scared of your kid just walking around, in the neighborhood alone on its own, or even just going to school. That I know, obviously, it's a huge thing, and it's an actual thing in the U.S. and it's a recorded thing with all the shootings and stuff. So that's not, it's not in their heads. It's not in the parents' head of, oh, they're being a little crazy cuckoo. No. It's a thing that can happen. I understand they're worried because, again, it's a thing that actually happens. So, of course, people are going to be more worried about certain things. And I don't know, crime in general probably is a little bit higher in certain cities. But again, I would love to know the statistics. As in, you have to be well informed of whether that is, it's all in my mind. Is it all psychological, or there are actual reasons to worry? Because no, these are things that happen. Which was a good idea to actually reduce anxiety as well. But yes, and of course the judge, the Scalliarant, of the whole the whole separate system, the parliament and the Congress and whatever branches, the judicial system. I think it's crazy that he says no, they should not be separated. Because to me, I don't know, I haven't thought of this properly, but I think to me it makes sense. No, it's good that they're separate, because then one can push against the other, right? So it's never good to have one thing, because then you don't get a difference in opinions and there's less debate, and you have all one population or one sector or one political thing that can simply, I think, oppress everyone else. That's how I see it. I think my logic tells me so. That I don't know, would love to hear more reasons about why this is bad, because it shouldn't be just no, I forbid this and then that's it, because no, that's kind of crazy, and that's how you get dictators. So maybe that's bad. But I don't know, maybe there's a more nuanced, I think, opinion about all of this that I don't know. I would love someone to explain it to me. Oh, the advantages and disadvantages of this, because maybe Again, maybe there's a middle ground that we can find. But yeah, but this video was incredibly interesting, and that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye!